Have you ever found yourself completely puzzled by someone who can be incredibly kind to their family and friends, but at the same time supports public policies that seem, well, pretty cruel? It's this contradiction, this moral puzzle that can be so confusing. Today, we're going to dive into the psychology behind it, drawing on some recent analysis to try and understand how these two very different sides can exist in the exact same person.
So this is the big question, right? It's the puzzle at the heart of our explainer today. We see it all the time. A person who's genuinely generous and compassionate in their personal life, who would give you the shirt off their back, can somehow also support leaders or actions that inflict widespread suffering. How in the world does the human mind square that circle? Let's unpack it.
Okay, to really get a handle on this, we need to start with a very specific and pretty common example. We're going to look at that apparent clash between certain strongly held political views and the religious faith that so often goes along with them. So, on one side of the coin, you have these public political positions. You've got strong support for really strict immigration enforcement. You have resistance to big cultural shifts, especially around issues like LGBTQIA rights. And often there's this deep loyalty to certain leaders, where any criticism is just waved away as, elite bias. These are the public-facing stances. But then you have this, a really core fundamental teaching in the Christian faith, a tradition that many of the people holding those political views also identify with very strongly. I was a stranger and you welcomed me. You can see how that creates this really jarring moral dissonance, right? So the big question is, how does the mind resolve this? Well, the key insight from the analysis isn't that faith is just being thrown out the window. Nope, it's more subtle than that. It's being reframed. For some people, faith starts to operate very differently in the public world compared to their private life. It's almost like it has two completely different job descriptions. And here it is. This is the heart of it. The issue isn't a lack of awareness. It's not like people don't know about these teachings on compassion. They do. The real divide, according to this analysis, is all about application. It's about where you're supposed to use these moral rules. So here's how that reframing actually works in practice. First, compassion gets walled off. It's seen as a personal duty, something for you to do at your church or food bank, but not something for the government to turn into policy. Second, love, well, that's a personal command for individual Christians to follow, but it's not seen as a guiding principle for how the state should act. And third, the whole idea of justice kind of shifts. It becomes less about fixing big, systemic problems and way more about just maintaining order and punishing anyone who steps out of line. So how does our brain even manage this kind of split? The source we're looking at introduces two really powerful psychological frameworks that help explain how we organize our moral lives in completely different ways. The first one is called compartmentalization. Now, I want you to picture your mind as a house with a bunch of different rooms. Your private kindness to your neighbor, that lives in one room. Your public political views, they live in a totally separate room, and the doors between them are sealed shut. That way, there's no conflict, no contradiction, because they never have to meet. And the complete opposite of that is a framework called integration. This is the drive for wholeness, for coherence. An integrated moral life says, nope, no sealed rooms here. It demands that what you do in private has to line up with your public actions and your beliefs. Everything has to answer to everything else. This slide really lays it all out. Compartmentalization, with its sealed-off moral rooms, is actually really psychologically efficient. It lets your private good deeds soothe your conscience, while your public actions can serve a totally different political goal. It neatly justifies the contradictions. Integration, on the other hand, well, it's costly, it's demanding, because it forces you to actually confront your own inconsistencies, and that's not always comfortable. So, okay, this is all a bit abstract. How does it actually play out in the real world? The analysis points to a really powerful and frankly disturbing example, the social function of just laughing. We're talking specifically about public laughter at another person's suffering. The analysis makes a pretty bold claim here. This isn't just some thoughtless act. It's a key example of that compartmentalization we were just talking about, and it serves a very important social and psychological function for the group doing the laughing. So what does this kind of laughter actually do? Well, for starters, it creates emotional distance, making it easier to stomach cruelty. It communicates dominance over the victim. But here's the really crucial part. It sends a signal to the entire group about who is considered unworthy of care. It normalizes cruelty towards them. It basically teaches the whole community what and who can be dismissed. It's like a social permission slip to stop caring.
And this leads to a pretty sobering conclusion from the source. This isn't just about one person's bad joke. It's about what we're becoming as a collective. When a society learns to watch suffering and feel justified in it, it's essentially teaching itself how to turn off its own empathy. This brings us to the final and maybe the most important part of this whole analysis. The focus shifts away from specific actions and toward a much, much deeper question. A question about who we are and who we are in the process of becoming. Right here is where the analysis really pivots. The focus moves away from trying to label a person as simply good or bad. The more vital question becomes, what are these public behaviors, like laughing at suffering? What are they actually shaping inside of us? What are we training ourselves day by day to become? And so ultimately the source concludes that this isn't really just about politics, it's about formation. It's about that slow, often unconscious shaping of our moral character through the public actions we endorse, the things we do, and the cruelty we permit. And so we're left with this, a question that's not just aimed at one group, but at every single one of us. It's a question that asks us to look past all of the political noise and just consider the long-term human cost of our choices. What kind of people are we becoming?